story time about how I was dating the school shooter. Yeah. So a little background information. I was a sophomore whenever this all happened, and it was around October. Well, the one day I was sitting at lunch with my group of friends. We're all sitting there having a good time when one of my friends dares me to go over and sit with this one kid. And he was sitting alone, he was kind of shy, and of course I did because they had offered me $10, guys. Can't beat that. So I go over there, we start talking, and I realize that he's actually really nice. And he's really hot. I never really saw what he looked like because he was always wearing hoodies during school. Anyways, we started hanging out more, and eventually he said that he liked me and we started dating. The relationship seemed pretty perfect. Well, 6 months in, I think he started to trust me more, because he had told me about this one group of girls that he absolutely hated. This group of girls just happened to be my friends. I didn't tell him that I was friends with these girls because they were considered controversial. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was dating the school shooter. Like I said, I had never told him that I was friends with these girls because they were controversial, but he would go on for hours about how much he hated these girls. He went as far to say that he wanted to kill them. I didn't think anything of it at first, because him and I had more of a sarcastic sense of humor, but he started to sound more and more serious every time that he would talk about it. Well, after us dating for 10 months, he calls me the one night, and he starts telling me about how he's going to shoot up the school. He had told me his entire plan of how he was going to do this. Now, he must have thought that we were like ride or die relationship, when in reality, I was recording everything that he was saying. After we got off the phone, I wrote an email to all of the office staff in my school, but I fell asleep and never finished the email. I woke up the next morning, finished it. I had texted my friends not to go to school that day. I had already missed the bus. I rode my bike to school that day. I ran to the principal's office, nobody was there, and that's whenever I heard shots in the hallway.
This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face. Have you ever seen a painting that looked extremely realistic? Jake was waiting for his mom when he saw a strangely realistic painting, but he made one mistake that would lead to terrifying consequences. During his mom's doctor's appointment, Jake was sitting alone in the hospital waiting room. That's when he saw the painting. It looked so real, almost like a photo. He was promised ice cream if he sat quietly, but he found himself growing more and more curious. He felt like he needed to move closer to the painting, so he got up and walked towards it. The painting was of an old man, but there was something wrong with it. It seemed like the eyes would follow Jake no matter where he'd walk. But soon something even more unbelievable would happen, something no one can explain. The painting, needless to say, made Jake feel creeped out, but he tried not to feel so scared. It was a painting after all. Then Jake leaned in and saw one weird detail. The old man had unusually long fingers and fingernails. A bit later, Jake's mom came out of the doctor's office, but Jake was nowhere to be found. She called him but got no reply. Then she turned around and saw a very realistic painting on the wall. The boy in the painting looked oddly familiar. Do you know the dark origins behind the fairy tales we all grew up hearing? In this series, I'm gonna draw each fairy tale and tell you the original scary stories they were based on. First, we have the Grimm's version of Snow White. Now, we all know how the story begins. The evil queen was jealous of Snow White's beauty, so she banished her into the woods. But the evil queen actually wanted to eat Snow White's liver and lungs with salt and pepper. The huntsman spared her and gave a boar's liver and lungs to the queen, which she eats. But the darkest part, which you might not know about, is how Snow White actually got revenge. Snow White and the prince got married and they invited the evil queen. Or should I say, tricked the evil queen into attending because they knew that she'd feel jealous enough to do it. And the evil queen actually fell for it. She arrived at Snow White and the prince's wedding, only to find out that they put a pair of iron shoes into burning coals until it heated up and glowed bright red. Then they placed it in front of the evil queen and made her wear those shoes until she danced to her death. Which definitely is not the same ending that I remember growing up hearing about. So let me know which fairy tale you want me to cover next, and follow if you want to see the rest of the series. Have you ever seen someone with extremely long long hair? Well, a man from Yamata Village in Japan saw a woman with very long hair nearly down to her knees, but things were much stranger than they seemed. He was walking down a narrow street when this woman approached him, and as he walked closer, he realized that she'd been smiling the whole time. But this wasn't a normal, friendly smile. There was something strange about it that made him feel creeped out. But he smiled back anyways because he found her beautiful. This would be his last mistake. In that moment, her hair rose up and stuck to him. Strands of hair hooked onto his clothes. He ran as fast as he could, terrified. He got home quickly, locked the door, but couldn't fall asleep all night. The next morning, he felt a bit better, so he opened the door to try to go to work, but he saw that on the other side, his door was covered in scratches. He had run into Hariona, the long-haired woman from Japanese urban legend whose hair can turn into hooks. She's also known as the smiling woman, as she usually smiles at people from the shadows and also specifically targets men who smile back at her. Comment below what you would do if you ran into her, and follow to see more.
Story time about how I found out that my mom fucked my boyfriend. So a little background information. My mom had me whenever she was 15. So we were always super close because we were so close in age. Well, during my senior year of high school, I started dating this guy. I was 18, he was 20. Well, after dating for a little bit, it was time for me to go off to college. And we didn't want to do long distance, so we kind of just cut it off. And instead of going to college, he just wanted to work, so he stayed in my hometown. And he was pretty close with my mom too, because during my school year, he got kicked out of his parents' house and came and stayed with us for like a month. And we're gonna call him Bryce. Well, I get a text from my mother the one day, and she's like, "Hey, honey, Bryce wants to know if he can come stay here. His parents kicked him out again." And I was like, "No, that's weird. Like, we're not even dating. What the fuck?" And her response was, "Well, honey, I'm a good person, so I'm not going to listen to what you say on this one. He's going to come stay with us." And I wasn't even living there at the time, and she was going to let him stay there. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my mom fucked my boyfriend. So like I said, my mom was trying to be a good person, so she let Bryce stay there. Well, then COVID hit, and my college was basically like, "Yeah, you guys can't stay here anymore, go somewhere else." So I packed up my things and I went home. And she told Bryce that he couldn't stay there anymore because I didn't feel comfortable with it. As she should. Well, then she started acting really weird. Like, she would leave the house at 2 in the morning and wouldn't come back until like 8 in the fucking morning. And the one night while she was making dinner, I saw a text from Bryce pop up on her phone. So I opened it, and there were no text messages except one from Bryce saying, "I won't, don't worry." But I didn't ask her about it because I trusted her. Well, the one night I was going to a party, and I was in charge of bringing the alcohol. Well, on my way to the party, I realized I forgot the alcohol. So I pull up to my house, and I see Bryce's truck outside. So I went around to the window, and in the living room, I could see my mom and Bryce fucking on the couch. I took a video, put it on Facebook, and after that, she was labeled a homewrecker in my small town. After that, I found out they had a whole relationship.
About how I caught my boyfriend with the girl he told me not to worry about. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had been dating a guy for a while. Even though we were never official, we were exclusive because we'd post each other on social media and everyone knew what it was. 6 months into our relationship, he invited me to his friend's party. We were drinking, dancing, playing games, and having a good time. At one point while I was hanging out with him and his friends, he said that he had to go to the bathroom and that he was going to use the porta potty. However, 45 minutes had gone by and he wasn't back yet, but I just assumed he had gotten sidetracked with one of his other friends. I ended up having to break the seal, so I headed to the porta potty, and when I opened the door, I saw him and another girl inside. I recognized her because she had sent him nudes before, but immediately messaged saying it was an accident. She was on her knees in the porta potty giving him a BJ. I instantly bolted away from them, and as I was running away, I could hear her calling me a B for barging in on them. My friends took me back home and consoled me while I drunk cried. He messaged everyone besides me that night asking where we went because we were his ride home. Shortly after this, I went to another party and I ran into him, but he played it off like he didn't know me. However, I heard he got into some bad things and now I guess he's doing crack. So I'm really happy that I dodged a bullet.
You know the dark origins behind the fairy tales we all grew up hearing? Today we're talking about the original scary story of Hansel and Gretel, which was actually a reflection of the real horrors of the Great Famine of 1315, when many people took extreme measures to survive. It's during this time that Hansel and Gretel's parents abandoned them in the woods. It was only in later editions that the mother became the evil stepmother character. Hansel takes breadcrumbs and leaves them behind, but they're eaten by birds, so they wander into the cottage built of candy where they meet the witch. The next morning, the witch locks up Hansel and makes Gretel feed him a lot of food while she gets only crab shells. Once the witch decides that Hansel is ready to be eaten, she makes Gretel open the oven to see if it's hot enough. Gretel pretends to be confused, so the witch has to demonstrate. When the witch leans into the oven, Gretel pushes her in and shuts the door. They take the witch's belongings and find their way home, but the interesting part is, after the witch is defeated, Hansel and Gretel's mother dies of unknown causes, suggesting a kind of connection between the witch and the mother. One survived by abandoning her children, and the other survived by eating others, both in some ways motivated by desperation. But which fairy tale should I talk about next? Follow to see the rest of the series.
about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago, and this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it, and 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, "Oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do." So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised. Just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3.